everyone, welcome back to my page, and welcome if you are brand new. I am so glad that you could join me today. I am just sharing just a little bit of information that I have run across as far as evidence, arguments for the resurrection, just some people that I have run across, their information within the last decade or so. And it's just information that I think that people need to be aware of. And just like everything else, you have to do what you want to do with the information. It's up to you at the end of the day, what you accept as truth and what you don't want to accept as truth. So I want to talk about Gary Habermas first. He is he's a distinguished professor at Liberty University, and he's very well known as far as resurrection research. He really focuses more on the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And his work, you can see it in a bunch of different apologetics and academic discussions on the topic. He really takes a minimal facts approach, which is kind of, it's basically, okay, skeptics and believers alike, we can agree that this absolutely happened. He doesn't really focus as much on more the controversial areas of the resurrection. It's more speculation type of thing. He sticks with what we can pretty much, it's pretty much, it's done, you know what I mean? So he talks about the empty tomb, and his first point is, Jesus's tomb was found empty by women, and they were the first ones to see. And this was not accepted as, that was not culturally acceptable. So if that had not been, if it had been fabricated, it would have been done with men, is what he's saying, that the men would have been the ones to have seen it first in a story, a fabricated story, because a man's opinion was seen as more credible than a woman's. So I'm just saying how they saw things. So he's saying that this by itself gives a lot of support for the empty tomb being solid, evidence of the resurrection. Also, the post-crucifixion appearances. We have multiple individuals and groups. They report seeing Jesus alive after his death. We have Peter and the 12 disciples, 500 plus people at once. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 6. James, who was Jesus' brother. And then we have Paul, who was Saul of Tarsus originally. The significance of this is, Paul, you think of Paul, for example. Paul was persecuting people. Like he was, for someone to be such a huge skeptic and an enemy of Jesus, an enemy of the truth, and then for him to just radically, he went off and he spread the gospel to the West, to the Western world, Europe and the Roman Empire. And it's, for that to have happened, he had to have been radically affected by something that was, it was real. It was very real to him. And so, that's he talks about the post-crucifixion appearances. That's another point that he makes. And then you have the early testimony where he says that 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3 through 7 is considered by Habermas to be a pre-Pauline creedal statement. And so we see that there's a rapid emergence of the Christian belief after his death and resurrection. And legends typically take a while. If you're going to create a bunch of fabricated lies and something that's just a fable, that takes quite a bit of time, and it has to be, spread down from generation to generation before it really takes hold. So he's saying that, it likely happened 2 to 5 years after all the event actually happened. And so it's much more likely that this was actually it's the truth. So that was really interesting to read that. The martyrdom of the disciples. He also says here, many disciples were willing to die for their belief in the resurrection. And, he makes a good point. We're not willing to die for a whole lot. I mean, our human instinct is to hold on to life for as long as we can. Unless it's a close family member or a loved one, we're not really, most people aren't willing to die for something. To be a martyr, you have to be so convinced of something being the truth, like irrefutably the truth, that you're willing to, this is how I'm going to go out, you have to be that certain of it. And so that was another point that he made, that they had a sincere belief in the resurrection, and that, we have that leads to credibility there. The origin of the Christian faith, he also says that the disciples, he brings that point up, where a lot of them were very fearful individuals. There was nothing, that they didn't step out. They doubted. They were fearful. There wasn't, we see these very human weaknesses in them. And for them to go from that to they were bold. They proclaimed the faith boldly. That's not, that's something that genuinely happened in their life to make them bold like that. And that's really a good point. That we're not, it's, a skeptic's not going to act boldly on something. Someone who acts boldly, they're convicted. Like they know that something's the truth. They know beyond the shadow of a doubt. And so anyway, that was really interesting. So that's Gary Habermas. He's really interesting. I will link his website in the description. And, he's all over the place. If you want to listen to, he has lectures and everything. He's a professor, so he has a lot of different lectures out there that you can listen to. There's another one, Lee Stroebel. He's an investigative journalist, and he wrote The Case for Christ. And I recommend that book to any Christian if you want to, get a refresher on things. But if you want to, if you know people in your life who you've shared the gospel with them before, and they're just not there. It's like, I need more. They're highly skeptical, and they're just not sure. Case for Christ is a good book to recommend for that. He takes a very different approach from Habermas, and it's a good book nonetheless, but he's comes from more of an investigative journalist background, and so it's kind of a more just a little bit more of a personal, he looks more, I think, at the human side of the story, the human side of the issue the topic, while Habermas is heavily, more into the historical. So it depends on what are you, I suggest both because you get a different angle on it, but they're both very interesting. What else do I want to say? I also want to just mention a man. He's not a reporter or a professor. I don't think he might be, actually, but he has a different background. Hugh Ross is he's really interesting to listen to as well. He is an astrophysicist, and he really approaches the gospel from just science. He says that science. This is what I find so cool about him. It's like so many scientists out there, they're just so against God, and they're so against any type of faith. But he's not like that. He said you can have the two, and science actually supports the existence of God and the support of Jesus Christ, of having a faith and it supports all of that. And so I really like his stuff, and he's very smart, and he can really explain. He also knows a lot about AI. He has a lot of stuff on AI, because I think the average person just doesn't. It just kind of goes over most people's heads unless you have that background where you can really understand what's being talked about. So I will link his information below as well. But the last thing I want to talk about, which is really kind of why I even thought about making a video on this type of stuff because we can all find information out there on evidence for the resurrection. And, we can all open our Bibles and we can all, study the Bible as far as those verses that support Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection, because that is what our faith rests on. Everything rests on that fact. I want to bring up a couple of people from way back in early history, and it's just in light of all of the things that, like, I made a video, it was a couple of videos ago, talking about the end times and talking about, I think it was the end times New Age movement and just the deception that's out there. And in that video, I talked about how they have done so much to, you had the rise of the Catholic, the Jesuits, and I mean, the Catholic Church was just, they were so, they censored and they literally took things away from the public that we're just now finding. And it's just really, it just makes you just think so much more deeply about these topics. And for some people, it might give them a lot of doubt. Okay, it's like, well, I believed something for all my life, and now I'm seeing something that was written a very, very long time ago, and I see that it's been hidden from us. What else do we not know? Also, if something's been, we've been told on the mainstream side that something's been altered, but then all this history, it's kind of like, has it really been altered? It just makes you really start looking at everything critically, everything. And so I want to share, if any of you have watched, any of you are familiar with, the first century, that time period, you've probably heard of Flavius, I think that's how you say it, Flavius Josephus, who was a Jewish historian. He wrote the Antiquities of the Jews, which I have here. It says it was written around 93 to 94, the year. And there are two passages that relate to Jesus. I will read that passage to you, and then I will we'll talk about it for a little bit. This is the famous passage that mentions Jesus directly. Okay, so here it is. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him. He appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. Most scholars, and this is okay, if you were to, Wikipedia or I guess ChatGPT or something like that, most scholars, this is the information you'll find, most scholars agree that this passage has been partially altered by Christian scribes. Phrases like, he was the Christ and he appeared to them alive again on the third day are probably later Christian additions. Are they though? Seriously, are they? Because, we're now running across works where we didn't even know that they existed, talking about the millennial reign and talking about the city to the north. And it's mentioning these things that we've always been taught are going to happen in the future as far as Revelation goes. And now, you see what I'm saying? It's like we've been taught certain things that it's like they've omitted what they don't want us to know. And then the things that we know about, oh, that's been altered. That's been altered. That's not, it wasn't originally like that. Really, we're at that point where it's really hard to know what's been, and I don't know if anyone out there has done more research on Josephus, or I'm about to mention Tacitus also for a minute, but I don't know if you've done more research on this, because please enlighten me if you have, because I find this really interesting. It's like, I mean, anyway, it really is. It's just, knowledge really is power in this day and age, because we've been deceived. I'm just going to say that we have been deceived on so many different accounts. Josephus also mentions James, the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, being executed. He writes, so they brought forward James, the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, and some others, and they were condemned. Okay, so this confirms that a historical Jesus existed and that he was called the Christ. While it doesn't mention the resurrection directly, it gives external historical attestation that Jesus was real and that early followers believed he was the Messiah. Okay, Josephus, he does not provide independent evidence of the resurrection. Like, this is definitely, and who knows, I mean, if anyone has run across that stuff in some library at the Vatican or some random, let me know, please, because I am just now realizing just how much I personally, I mean, many of us feel like this if we're looking into these topics, but how much we really do not know. And in that quest of realizing how much you don't know, I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but you feel like your faith is actually becoming stronger, because you really do, like, you see the war, you see that battle, you see how the enemy has just hidden so much from the average person, from the public. And this has been over human history. We're not talking about something that, this isn't a Trump issue or a, Democrat Republican issue. I mean, it's a humanity issue, and it's a Garden of Eden type of thing. I mean, it's gone back to the very beginning. And so I'm getting way off topic right now, but anyway, so the mainstream belief is that these things were altered, that these writings were altered by Christian scribes later on. And I'm thinking, Christian scribes, maybe Jesuit scribes, that sounds a little bit more like it could be more, plausible. But that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, I want to talk about, just mention Tacitus really quick, and then I'm going to wrap up the video, because I don't want to talk. These videos I'm really trying to keep under about 20 minutes or so, because people I found that they don't have the attention span. People want shorts, and they want short, digestible information. And so anyway, but I don't know if you all are familiar with Tacitus. He was I believe he was a Roman military leader or official. He had some type of leadership position in the Roman Empire. But he mentions this about Jesus and Christianity while discussing Emperor Nero. And if anyone is familiar with Nero was one of the most brutal dictators. I mean, as far as what he did to Christians, I mean, it was absolutely just, I mean, the evil involved with what he did to people. I don't know. You can't really, it's up there with the Holocaust, I'm sure, but it's just really hard to fathom that. But anyway, he wrote the Annals. He mentions Jesus in this famous passage. I'll read it for you. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome. And then he refers to basically Christianity, or what came out of it, as, or I think he's referring to Judea when he's saying all this, the area where this came out of. He says it's where all the hideous and shameful things center. So, how does he really feel about it? Anyway, so that's really interesting. So we don't see evidence for the resurrection there, but we see that, that he was executed under Pontius Pilate, and he refers to Christianity that came out of that as superstition. I can't talk. A superstition. One last thing I want to mention is the Babylonian Talmud, and I think this is around the year 200. The rabbinic texts corroborate the crucifixion at Passover, and they acknowledge that Jesus had followers who believed he was the Messiah. So, again, we don't see that proof of the resurrection, but we do see that he was, his followers believed that he was, Jesus Christ. He was the Son of God. He was the Messiah. He was everything that he said he was. And so, the point of this video is not to, oh, I'm now a Christian after this video. It wasn't to do that. It was just to give you all some resources as far as where to look if you need more information and you just want reputable sources that you can listen to and you can find out more from. And the Josephus and Tacitus, I would be really, if someone knows a lot more about that type of stuff, I would love I'm going to leave the comments open below. If you have information on that and you could enlighten me more about, because that area is just fascinating to me, because there's just, like I said, it really is. It's a long, it's a rabbit hole that you end up going down. And so I would just be really interested in knowing more. But anyway, that's all I have for you all today. I hope you all take care and God bless you.